Welcome to the 50th episode of Thrivers, Impact-Driven Leadership for the Next Normal podcast. I am your host, Tucker Wanamaker, the CEO of Thrive Impact. And if you're listening to this, you are probably someone who doesn't just want to do nice things in the world, but you actually want to create positive change in people's lives and not burn out while doing it. Well, how do you do that? Our mission is to redefine what normal is for workplace leadership, to be about co-creating impact from the inside out. We believe that burnout is the enemy of creating positive change. And so we want to connect you with impact-driven leaders and ideas so that you can learn to thrive in today's landscape. And today is a very special episode, not only it being our 50th, but also being the final one with my wonderful co-host, Sarah Fanslau. Sarah, it is wonderful to be here. Sad also to be here with you on this final episode of our podcast together. The podcast will keep going, but this is our final one with you as us hosting together. So, but wonderful to be here with you anyway.
Yeah, same. Bittersweet for sure.
And Sarah, would you like to share whatever you are able to share about why is this your final episode? What's going on here? What's going on?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I am, as the end of this month in June, kind of moving on from Thrive to a few different things. One, I can't fully say yet. It's going through legal and, you can't say until you can say. But really exciting kind of global work focused on activism. And so there's that. And then also some deeper research and evaluation work, as all you listeners probably know, if you've been with us a while, that is really my passion. And I'm going to be both starting my own consultancy business around that, as well as partnering and engaging with other researchers and evaluators on a range of different issues. And one of them right now is around, for example, the efficacy of cash transfers versus Section 8 vouchers when it comes to reducing homelessness. So really, turning my attention to some of those intractable problems that our country is facing and using evaluation and research as a lens to try to create some solutions.
Yeah. Well, and as soon as we know, we will pop that up in the show notes for you all to share. So that way you can see a little bit more about Sarah and where she's going. Sarah, super excited for you, of course, and for you going deeper into the work that you love and deep into nitty gritty. I mean, like what you just talked about, real deep in the trenches of a community, very specific issue-based problem, and also growing in your, I know you're still in your master's program and maybe even going on beyond that too, and from a schooling perspective. So really excited for you and staying connected with you as you go on that. And for today, what we thought would be helpful, we didn't want to just have an announcement podcast because while that's important, it's kind of womp womp. Is we wanted to provide some value to all of you who are listening, who have been listening throughout the year or years, however long we've had this podcast, of really what have we been learning from working with each other. Sarah and I are very different personalities. We bring a lot of different things to the table, and so part of it's gonna, we want to just bring forward what are the learnings and the key pieces that we're bringing forward almost into our own lives moving forward around working in Thrive, working in this work. As I said a minute ago, Thrive is of course still moving forward. I'm still here as the CEO. We're going to continue to do this podcast. In fact, we're launching a whole campaign soon about creating impact from the inside out and leadership for the next normal, and really focusing our attention on that. And so excited for that to come out. But for this podcast and this closing, we wanted to do it as a space of learning and appreciation, really, because that's a big part of our model. This is really a way, I believe, and Sarah, I'm curious your perspective on that, a way of continuing to live into our own work around appreciative-based approaches, positive psychology. And how do you do that when people are leaving? Like, that's a fascinating topic that one day we'll probably hit on, but we're hoping to have this as a space of reflection and learning that you can learn from what we've been learning and working with each other.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in.
Well, who should start, Sarah? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, here, I'll start. Okay, so I'll start a little bit. And I asked members of our team some things, like what are the Sarah isms? What are the, not only the things they appreciate about you, but what are things that they are applying to their life because of you, which I think is really important, because when we talk about creating impact, like positive change means that people are changing. And so it's one thing to appreciate. It's another thing to say, oh, you know what, I'm actually totally approaching my work and life and whatever differently. And so I just want to share a few from some of the team. I didn't get everybody, but I did get a few.
Nice.
One thing that Megan brought up actually was really fascinating. She said the first thing she talked about was your ability to theme and to synthesize and theming data. But what was really fascinating, the nuance of it, was how the way that you theme and it creates such a humanity for people that people see that they're not alone. Like because there's these commonalities across. Like the way that you use data, and she's like, I'm really looking at that because she's really going to be doing some more of our data work. Yeah. Is how do I maintain and keep building that, not just like static numbers or things on a page, but the humanity of it, so that people not only see an understanding of themselves, but they also see that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really powerful nuance of the power of how you have themed and synthesized data in a way that helped it to be not only understandable, but help people to not feel isolated and alone anymore.
Yeah.
And that was a really powerful piece that I thought wanted to bring forward of something that she has learned. And I have too, actually. I didn't even realize it, but I was like, yeah, you're exactly right, Megan. Like, so that was one thing.
Well, and I will say, that is not my made, like I didn't make up that approach. It really, those roots are in participatory and empowerment related evaluation, right? And if y'all haven't read this book, which I'm holding up to the screen, you should, Empowerment, Evaluation, and Social Justice. But the idea here is that we're flipping the script on its head, right? Usually experts come in and say, here's the deal, and here's the data, and here's what to do. And these approaches, participatory and empowerment, are both about doing something completely different, which is saying, what do you see? And what do you think we should do? And the point is that if folks are going to go out and do the thing, it needs to be theirs to do. And so that approach is not just when it comes to kind of creating a program, which some people do, but also looking at the data. And so those are well-known tools and techniques that a lot of folks are bringing now into evaluation and research spaces to make them more humane, to exactly Megan's point.
Yeah, that's great. A couple other things. Certainly Clear as Kind came up a couple times with both Megan and Alan and Julie. And, Megan, for example, was talking about how, she's from West Virginia. They tend to talk around things a lot. And with Sarah, it's like, you just know where she stands because she's clear. And Julie was even sharing how she's embodying this, that when she has communications, she's working on asking herself the question, is this clear? So you're like, you've given people a reflective question. And frankly, even for me too, of like, what do I know that I can share that is clear for me, so I can at least share whatever that is, even if I don't know that. But asking that question, like, is this clear because I want to be kind? Is this clear in at least sharing where I'm at, or what is needing to be communicated? And also in a space of reflecting back too. So obviously you've taken that's of course a Brene Brown quote, clear as kind.
I was going to say that's not mine either.
Unclear is unkind. Well, but the thing is that you've embodied it. Like you've taken, it's one thing to have quotes, and even the book you just shared, right? It's one thing to have theory, but you apply those things. Like they're not just theories. They're applied, including the data that you were just talking about. You've applied it into the work, and we've seen the impact of that. You've applied clear as kind, unclear as unkind. Yeah. And now it's given people space to, like Alan, for example, said, pursuing a pursual of clarity. He said, especially in communications and expectations. He talked about setting expectations and then respecting and reminding of boundaries, and just helping people to notice that that's just what is. And this is clear. And so that was clearly a piece that I would say, even for me too, has been helpful in getting to clarity with people, of like having that relentless pursuit of clarity. Because clarity is a tough thing. Like clarity is this word that people all the time say they want, but don't really know what that means. In the like, even the word clarity is actually not all that clear in some ways. But the way that you pursue it of almost through reflection and asking that question, and for me has been really helpful of thinking about how do I get to some clarity? Is this clear? Which ultimately is kind, you know?
Yeah. I love that.
Another thing I wanted to share too, that is really the space that you hold as a professional, as a woman. There was a clear piece that came from both Megan and Julie around. In fact, Megan said, "I want to borrow her quiet, calm, steady way of being." She said, "I see her go to work, not trying to perform." And Megan said to her, she said to me that whenever I feel like I'm in this space of trying to perform or prove something, just slow down and just get to work. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing that Megan shared. And similarly with Julie, that she tries to channel some of that you were such a good example of that confidence and that steadiness as a woman. She specifically was speaking to as a woman in a professional space with a lot of people that we interact with on a regular basis, of the example that you provided in that and that's why I loved how Megan shared it is it's not about performing. It's not about proving. It's like, let's get to work.
Yeah.
And let's have impact.
Right on, Megan.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah.
And I think to me that spoke to me as well of like your relentless pursuit of creating impact, of like tying it back to the mission. We're here for something bigger than ourselves. And so, you know, and I've dealt with a lot of performance things, and I don't know if that's probably because of me growing up in the culture I grew up in as a male, honestly. And you've helped me to slough off some of that performance orientation and just get to work, you know, just get the stuff done as well. And so I really saw a lot of what they were sharing also, and what I've learned from you too, of just get her done, stay focused on the impact. This is why we're here. Let's let the data speak to it. Yeah, just get her done. I love that. I have this little thing that says, nothing will make you feel better except doing the work. Like, I feel like that's a statement that you would have said to me once upon a time.
It's really, I'm hearing my dad too. You know, my father would always say, my dad's a business owner, right? And he would always tell us, just give him a call, right? Just give him a call. Like, just, because you know what? The answer to every question you don't ask is no. And so, you know, just that example of just go do the work, go ask the question, go see what happens, right? Is a powerful one that I learned from my dad.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's great. Yeah. And don't worry about the outcome yet. Don't like project forward an outcome you think it's going to be. I love that. Just make the phone call. Just call it and then find out. Then you'll get outcomes on the back end, right? Like, don't project outcomes.
We waste so much time though, like getting caught in what could happen. And it's like, that doesn't matter. That's a waste of time. Like, just pick up the phone and take the first step. Yeah. You know? Yeah. That's funny.
And then the last thing I'll share is, this came from Megan, is you have great hair. You do, which it is. It's beautiful hair, Sarah. You have great hair, and I was like, I'm definitely sharing that one with Sarah. She's gonna love it.
You need to get Megan on this podcast, because Megan is a riot and amazing,
she is so fun. So those are a few just from the team, and I had one too that, you know, I mean, Sarah, you've been an incredible partner with me and for me in helping my divergence come into convergence, and being a yin to my yang and vice versa. And one of the things I think really practically, I think that I loved learning from you was the space of convergence in a facilitated experience, and really helping people to go through like key sequenced steps of convergence. You know, there are a lot of people right now in our space. And I remember talking to a foundation person once who said, I'm really tired of having generative conversations, you know? And it's like, and you're like, I mean, generative conversations are super helpful, but that's like half true. Like, that's half the process. Like, you're missing so much more. That's really, if you don't keep going in the convergence of theming, which is kind of what Megan was sharing earlier, and some of what that book was, you were just talking about with that book, that if you're missing the convergence side, you're actually doing a disservice to people. You're treating them like a box of obligation you're checking off to like help them to feel heard. But
Right.
really the reality is how do we get that task cohesion, that and that converging on what are our voices, what do you understand our voices are saying, and how are we moving forward together? And I've seen that come forward in a lot of our different workshops around how you've helped to, in a facilitated way, we've been able to create alignment. In fact, we literally have a workshop called the Alignment Workshop that we
Yeah.
do that helps to open the aperture and close it both, right? All in
Yeah.
one 2-hour experience on a variety of different pieces. And I think that to me is such an honoring of humans, of both sides of the divergence and the convergence.
For sure.
And so for me, I keep thinking about, don't ever ask for data that you're not actually going to use. Don't
100%.
do a generative conversation that ultimately doesn't actually do anything or mean anything. Don't ask the question if you're not actually going to do something about it. Otherwise,
Yes.
you're stealing from their humanity. You're stealing from trust. And the way that we've been able to facilitate these experiences where the voices hear the voices and see their own alignment has been really magical to experience and to apply into facilitated workshops.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, I love that. Thank you for gathering that and sharing it. It's super meaningful for me to hear all of that. And I think from my side, even just as we were talking, when I came into Thrive, and partially, I think from day one, it was clear that you do a great job, and Thrive in general does a great job of putting frames to concepts that people hold to make it easier for them to access. And I think that that's been and then simplifying, right? Asking that question of what is the simplest way and the easiest way we can help people understand this complex material. And that has been, a huge source of learning for me. The last podcast, I walked through some of that research and you said, oh, wow, you've really broken this down in a way that makes it easy for folks to understand. And I really think these past few years, I've really learned a lot of that technique from you, of just one, making it visual, two, right? And then two, stripping it down. And so that's definitely one of the big pieces. I mean, even yesterday I was on a coalition meeting about this work around housing, and we put together a deck, right, in Canva. And, it's the research design is a quasi-experimental, non-equivalent group, concurrent mixed methods design. Does anyone know what that means? No, right? And so, right. So anyway, we broke it down with arrows and all, I really think, and you often talk about visuals as a discipline, and I 100% agree. And, I think you have a lot of that strength in part because you are such a visual learner. And so you bring that discipline necessarily because that is something you need to learn. Well, it turns out a lot of other people do too, right? Most people actually.
Yeah.
And even if they don't need it to learn, it's going to speed up their learning and their digestion of it and all of those things. So I think, that for me is a huge piece that I'm really taking away with me and that I'm super grateful to have kind of practiced here at Live.
I was so excited when you got your iPad and I saw that deck and I was like, oh yeah, she was drawing on the iPad.
I was
the
drawing on
the camera and everything. I was like, yes, I was so excited about that.
It matters. That engagement matters, And I mean, even a lot of the tools, again, like yesterday, we used Easy Retro to gather voices. So some of these tools and these approaches that we have used together here are just going to now be part of it's going to be part of my toolbox in a way that I just didn't have before, you know? So that is hugely valuable. And then of course, also, I've just really learned about choreographing conversations and spaces and what that looks like and how to do it well. And again, I think, one of the key principles that I'm coming to just in life is that the simpler it is, the better it is, right? And I just think that is, again, I'm going to hold up this book. If y'all don't know David Fetterman, he is a giant in the evaluation world. And I am lucky enough to be one of 4 people in a class with him this
Seriously?
summer. It's like
Oh
amazing.
my gosh.
So like, I know. And he walked us through kind of the way that they do it. And it is so simple. And it's so simple because he has taken the time to look at all these approaches, look at all of these materials and like bring it here for folks, right? And he works with people who can't read or write in, South Africa. He works with
Wow.
indigenous tribes, right? And the discipline of simplicity, I think, is
Yeah.
just something that, you really believe in and have brought to Thrive. And I think that that is partially why the approach is so powerful, because it's simple. And
Hmm.
simple doesn't mean that it's not complex, right? It's just not outwardly complex. And there's a difference,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm. Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. Well, I have to give a lot of kudos to the exchange approach
Of
and to
course.
John
Yeah.
Berghoff and Adair
100%.
Cates and Steve Bouchard and a lot of those team members over at Exchange, because they've helped me to give me the tools to dive into it and make it my own. And but I really
Totally.
appreciate you sharing that, and that you've got your own iPad and are like visualizing things and like working
Totally.
like, how do I get this to a visual as fast as possible?
How do we get it to a visual?
Yeah.
Straight up. Yeah. It's a discipline. I really think that people thinking, and just that phrase, like it's a discipline, I think is a really helpful, just mental phrase for
Yeah.
folks to remember, because it is a discipline,
Hmm.
and it's super important.
You know,
And then finally, yeah,
I
go.
want to say one thing to that point. I think the other thing that to that learning that I've realized is that the faster we get to something that people are looking at together,
Yeah.
it makes it more objective. Like it goes back to that subjective versus
100%.
objective. I literally practiced this with Julie on our team, and who is also my wife. We were having a really tense conversation. It was a couple weeks ago. And I literally pulled out my iPad and started drawing things and said, "Is this what you're talking about?" And
Yeah.
literally just by getting it out of this just one-on-one verbal dialogue to a visual that both of us are looking at, it changed the whole nature of our conversation for the
Yeah.
better. It was really
Yeah.
fascinating to see that. And of course, we use this all the time in, experiences and learning processes. And why do we do that? Well, because people learn quicker, because they're looking
Yes.
at the same thing together. It makes it more objective. It's like, wow, let me apply this to my own married life. Like it actually worked really well. It was really
Yeah.
fascinating. So I just wanted to throw that out there of how
Totally.
much I've seen this really help me too. And in my own life in all things is like visualize as fast as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even, when I was at Points of Light, I went to the American Express Leadership Academy, which it's run by the Center for Creative Leadership. And afterwards, we each got a coach. And the coach said to me, the same thing, but it was that if you are in a disagreement with someone, sit on the same side of the table with them and look at and put up your thoughts and ideas on a wall. Because if they're looking at you, they're going to put the problems on, right?
Onto
It's going to be
you.
about you and
Mm,
them. Right. And so I've always remembered that, because I'm like, oh God, that is such practical and simple advice. Sit on the same side of the table
yeah.
and look at the problem instead of looking at each other and making each other the problem, which I
Mm.
think is just so good.
Yeah, and on
Yes.
Zoom, then you do that by, having a little iPad or sharing your
Right.
screen or something like that, right? Yeah,
For sure.
that's
For
great.
sure. Well, I think the other big thing, for me is, when I came to Thrive, it was from an organization that was, in some ways struggling. There were a lot of changes happening, still a lot of changes happening. And this question of just what does leadership look like now was a big one for me. And I think, as I've talked about before, I had been engaging my team in co-creation without knowing that it was called co-creation, doing a lot of the stuff we had talked about, but without knowing the tools and the frames. And I think it's been really fascinating for me to learn more about conscious leadership, and also I think to recognize the parts of my leadership that are authentic to me,
Yeah.
because I think that's there's a lot of research and on transformational and authentic leadership, and authentic leadership has a number of key pieces around transparency, ethical behavior, trust, reflection that really resonate with me. One of the
Yeah.
things that is really important to me is a sense of integrity. if I am I going to say it, I'm going to do it. And like that is a really kind of really important piece for me. And so kind of coming in here, learning some of the leadership tools and techniques, and then also thinking like, what does my leadership look like? And what do I want to take from other approaches? And what do I want to keep as my own? And then also this idea that we all perform leadership differently, and there's not a right necessarily or a wrong to the performance of leadership if it has kind of those pieces underneath it that I think research tells us are so important. And so that's also been, I think, important for me to be on that journey of learning around leadership, and then saying, here's who I am as a leader, and that's how I'm gonna to show up. So that's another thing I've really appreciated diving into here.
I love that you're sharing that, of which goes kind of that authentic, like self-reflective. Wait, who am I?
Yeah.
And I think about, I was just in an exchange training last night or yesterday about enrollment and psychological safety, and they were really, of course, drawing from Amy Edmondson's work and that big question of psychological safety around, can I be me and still show up here as myself, as a leader, as somebody who has influence? Can I still be me, not be bad or good? I mean, it's tricky, but can I just honestly show up and be me and who I am? And I love that you felt like you were able to explore that and learn that here, because that's
for sure.
Like, that's like so core to our work. It's like, oh, that's such a great learning.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing, especially with women, and this kind of goes back to Megan and Julie's comment, is that there's still so many gender stereotypes in the world and in the workplace about how women are going to act and what they're going to show up like, and softly, and that's just like, that's not who I am, right? And so one thing that a lot of my team at Multiplying Good kind of shared with me before I left is that what I was able to do was kind of both push and pull them, which is to say, what is your best and how can I help you get there? And then how can I support you, right? And also kind of getting some new tools. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, especially for women, like, show up as you, right? Like, don't let people tell you how to show up. Like, I often think about, I don't know if you've seen those videos of like men asking women to smile on the streets of New York, but like, don't let somebody else tell you how to show up, right? Like, show up how you're going to show up, embody the things that you're great at and that you're good at and that people respect you for, and like, let the rest melt away. I just think for women, it's such a, it's a hard spot because people expect us to show up like this a lot of the time. And if we don't, then we're aggressive and we're mean and we're whatever. And,
all these words that are associated with like, she's bitchy or she's pissy or she's,
right.
And it's not cool.
Yeah. So I really appreciated, with you diving into some of those leadership tools and techniques, and also seeing how, you show up as a leader, which is where you show up differently as leaders. Right. And I think that that's also really interesting to see those differences and how they play out and what that looks like. And then also be okay with the fact that there's not a right or a wrong, as long as they're a set of principles that you're embodying for other folks.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I think you've helped me to, partly in your own juxtaposition to me, help me to notice myself more as well, of, even little ways like how I love sharing the story of communication styles, like how video is really helpful for me. So you put a video up in Slack for things versus for you, you're like, I'm never going to watch a video. I'll read the transcript. Right. And neither of them are right or wrong. And I think that part of it is stripping away the judgment, right? What's right or wrong. That's not even the right question. Is what is my learning style? What is your learning style? And I've thought like, okay, how do I get, and I haven't always been great at this, and but I like, how do I write things down? Because that's how Sarah learns. And
Right.
she likes that's helpful for her to engage in something quicker is by getting something down on a piece of paper or, you know, Slack message or whatever. And you've also helped to, you know, have empathy on me in a sense of saying, yeah, I'll do a short video for you up in Slack going through, because for whatever reason, if you send me a document, it'll take me like 5 times as long for me to digest it and learn it versus if you
Yeah.
send me the document with you walking through it in a video. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm engaged in a more collaborative space for whatever
Yeah.
reason. And I also get some of your nuances, and I like the learning. It
Totally.
amplifies so fast.
Yeah. Well, and I think the discipline of doing that with you, we've also now, of course, translated to our clients, and and it's huge for folks there as well. I mean, we've heard a number of times, like I've watched that video over and over again.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
Like we've literally heard that because, like you, other people can't intuit everything from a page of writing,
Yeah.
right? It's some of those old ways of knowing that in some ways are rooted in white supremacy in some ways, right?
Yeah.
The supremacy
Of the
of
written
the
word.
written
Yeah.
word, right? And it's such an interesting thing to think about, right? And how do we incorporate more oral traditions? And now that we have
Yeah.
video traditions of knowing and sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. We use that tool. It's called Bomb Bomb.
So brilliant.
Great tool. Actually, it was a friend of mine who owns it down in Colorado Springs, but it's a
Oh, really?
wonderful video email tool that people can use. And we literally use it all the time when we're walking through proposals, when we're walking through data decks, when we're walking through agendas, when we're just needing to share some important news. Sarah, you and I would hop on to Bomb Bomb, or you'd shoot a
Yeah,
quick video and we'd put it up there and pop it into into an email. And it just helps that learning get amplified quickly. And it also humanizes it too. Like they're hearing our voices and seeing our facial expressions, which just makes it more human. Yeah. I love
for
that you're
sure.
bringing that up. Yeah. That's a good one.
Otherwise, it would be 16 bullet points in the email, right? Trying to
Yeah.
give the context instead of like a 5-minute video where you
Mm-hmm.
can hear and see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that has been huge. And I think is also part of, this question of how do I support and scaffold in a way that is, uh, I think that's one of my questions. One of the things I'm still learning into is, what does it look like to support and scaffold a team that has different needs and abilities?
Yeah.
Because what one person needs, to your point, the other person doesn't need or doesn't even like. And then what does it look like
Yeah.
to build a
What is
team
that at
where
scale and
learning
bigger
is,
teams?
yeah, yeah. And I don't think I have the answer for that yet, except doing a bit of everything like we do on live Zooms, where
Mm-hmm.
you have written options, you have verbal options, but in the doing the work together, I still think that's something that's an interesting puzzle
Yeah.
to figure out.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think I have probably one final question. Curious if you have any questions too that you want to bring in. You may or may not. I don't know, but I just wanted to open that up. But what are you most going to miss? What are you most going to miss about working here, being a part of the work that we've done together?
Yeah. I mean, I'll do two, probably one kind of internally and one more externally. I think starting externally, it's just a privilege to be part of the journey of organizations that we've partnered with. I mean,
Yeah.
and in particular, I've been reflecting on this a little bit. Like, I love the small, scrappy nonprofits, but I think my heart is with the bigger nonprofits who have the infrastructure to this is where I like to really go get it done, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where my energy lies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about Greater Nashua, and like they could take that big strategic plan and put the resources against really kind of shifting some
Yeah.
significant things, and like that's really exciting to see a huge organization like that
Mm-hmm.
go through that and be part of that journey. Same with Resolve, like they're not a huge team like Greater Nashua, but they're an organization with some resources and some infrastructure who could, take the learning and the training and really put it into action in a way that I think has really demonstrable impact, not only inside but outside of their walls. And so that for me, I think was a really exciting piece, and certainly something I will miss. And then internally, I mean, I think we've just had some fun times, right? It's
Yeah.
been like, I think we've learned from each other. We've had some good times. It's been almost 3 years. It would have been 3 years in September. So a good chunk of time of really kind of learning. I think you kind of had just taken over as CEO, or like actually took over as CEO just after I started, and
Yeah.
so it's been a Thrive Impact has been on its own organizational journey,
For
right, and
sure.
continues on that journey.
Yeah.
I think, and it's been interesting to be in, and I think really great to be in a small team, really looking at how it goes down in a small team and what
Hmm.
that looks like, and then certainly with you, just I think we've learned a lot from each other, for sure.
Hmm.
I think we've learned a lot from each other, and that's always, I love to learn. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of what we just shared, what we've been
yeah,
learning from each other. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm gonna miss your partnership. I'm gonna miss your ability to be that juxtaposition for me. In workshops, your voice of the data, has been really meaningful. That's been a piece that I've learned too, of like continuing to combine the head and the heart together, and the data helps to speak to the head, which is so
Yeah.
needed, and also getting to the heart through it as well. And the combo of the two, and like you've been such a great resource and learning partner in that, and crafting
Mm,
the sequencing of different workshops, and like, okay, we have these outcomes, how the heck are we going to get them done? And
yeah.
like, how do we sequence and choreograph these conversations to allow it to build in a way that helps people to really achieve that healing or impact or whatever it is we're trying to do.
Mm,
So I'm definitely going to miss your design partnership.
for sure.
Yeah.
That was fun. Yeah.
But maybe we'll
Mm,
have maybe we could have you back on the podcast after
there
your
you go.
summer course, as an example. Like,
Yeah.
maybe we need to do a quarterly Sarah podcast of like, all right, Sarah, what's going on out there, or something like that. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
Well, I'm sure our paths will continue to cross, and
for
you
sure.
know you're going to be like working on some research project. You're like, we need a facilitator to come in here, and I know that's gonna.
Always.
You're like,
Yeah.
who can? Yeah, I know this guy. I know this organization.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah. It's been great. It's been a pleasure to be part of this team. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think we've built something. Yeah, obviously has still more work to do, but as every organization does. But I feel really proud of the culture that you and I have helped to build. And
For sure.
yeah, any final remarks, questions before we go?
No, I mean, I think the only thing I would say to folks, and this is partially, wait, I gotta find something so I can read it. It's not a poem though, so don't worry. It is.
That was a little inside
My
story there.
friend
Yeah.
sent me a poem recently, and he was like, "What is
What
this?"
does this mean?
He was like, "Wait, what are you saying?" And I was like, "Never mind, no, never mind." Okay. I just want to encourage people to go, to think about the things that are at the center of your energy, and just keep finding it. One
Hmm.
thing, and this is not where I'm going to work, but that I saw recently, I don't know if you know Pivotal. It's the organization now founded by Melinda French Gates. And they had some really, I have to read this thing. If I can find it, but it was basically saying like, Americans are no longer willing to accept the glacial pace of change. It's about being impatient with the rate of progress, and just being like, no, we need to move further, faster. And I've actually heard this echoed in a few places recently, also in Claremont Graduate University. They're creating, which is the thing I might go on to get, they're creating practical doctorates, like not a PhD, it's a practical doctorate in applied research and evaluation. Why? Because PhDs are irrelevant now, almost, right? Like people can't get jobs, they can't, but practical doctorates that help people go out and change the world, like that's what we need. And so, like, it is kind of this impatience at, the slow rate of change in the world around us that is like driving my energy in these new directions. And I just want to encourage other people who are feeling that impatience to go do it, like to go to those places that are going to help you harness that impatience toward the greater good. And practical is where it's at these days. So go be impatient. Go be impatient. The world needs impatience.
Get to work. Get to work out there. Yeah. I love that. That's great. Well, my friend, we sign off on our final podcast together. Well, not really. Final podcast is co-host.
Yeah.
You'll be back because you have too much learning that is so applicable to this podcast. But thanks for 50 episodes of the podcast, Sarah. Thanks for the 3 years you've been with us. And I'm excited about what's next for both Thrive and for you and for how those paths eventually cross again.
100%.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, we'll put stuff in the show notes as usual. And eventually, once Sarah lets us know where she's going and goes through legal, we'll put it in the show notes, let you know. Probably will see it on LinkedIn eventually too. But otherwise, thanks for listening to our 50th episode. And we'll see you in our next episode, which kicks off our Impact from the Inside Out leadership process and campaign with this podcast. So bye, everybody. Thanks for listening in.
Thanks, y'all.